Inspired Moon. Chapter 30. Can You Believe series. The Gas Crisis in 1970s America. A world of plenty. In the years leading up to the 1970s, the United States enjoyed a period of economic growth and abundance. The post-World War II era saw an explosion in suburban development, car ownership, and interstate travel. Gasoline was plentiful and cheap, fueling the American dream of freedom and mobility. The automobile industry boomed, with Detroit's big three automakers, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, dominating the market with their powerful, fuel-guzzling vehicles. This era of prosperity seemed unshakable, with oil considered a virtually inexhaustible resource. The geopolitical landscape, tensions and alliances. The stability of the oil supply was significantly influenced by the geopolitical landscape. The Middle East, rich in oil reserves, became a focal point of international politics. The US had developed a complex network of alliances in the region, often supporting regimes that were friendly to Western interests but unpopular among their own populations. These alliances, especially the support for Israel, would later become flashpoints in the unfolding crisis. The global oil landscape, OPEC's emergence. The global oil industry in the 1960s and early 1970s was dominated by a handful of multinational companies, often referred to as the Seven Sisters, which controlled the majority of oil production and distribution. These companies were predominantly Western, with deep-rooted interests in the oil-rich Middle Eastern countries. However, the formation of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, in 1960 marked the beginning of a shift in power. OPEC, founded by Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela, aimed to unify and coordinate petroleum policies among member countries. The organization's goal was to secure fair and stable prices for petroleum producers, and a steady supply of oil to consuming nations, while ensuring a fair return on investments in the industry. Throughout the 1960s, OPEC slowly gained influence, but it was the geopolitical upheavals of the 1970s that truly catapulted it into a position of power. The trigger: Yom Kippur War and the Arab oil embargo. The stability of this era was abruptly shattered in October 1973 when the Yom Kippur War broke out between Israel and a coalition of Arab states led by Egypt and Syria. The geopolitical landscape shifted dramatically when the United States chose to support Israel by supplying it with arms and other forms of aid. In retaliation, the Arab members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, initiated an oil embargo against the United States and other nations perceived as allies of Israel. The embargo began modestly on October 17, 1973, with OPEC reducing oil production by 5% per month. By December, OPEC had increased oil prices from $3 to $12 per barrel, quadrupling them in a matter of months. The immediate impact was a sharp increase in gasoline prices and a significant reduction in oil availability. The crisis unfolds: shortages and rationing. The effects of the oil embargo were felt almost instantaneously across the United States. Gasoline shortages led to long lines at gas stations, sometimes stretching for miles. In many places, fuel was rationed. Gas stations displayed signs reading, "No gas," or "Closed," and tempers flared as frustrated motorists waited for hours, often only to be turned away empty-handed. In response to the crisis, the U.S. government took several steps to manage the situation. President Richard Nixon addressed the nation on November 7, 1973, announcing a series of measures designed to conserve energy and reduce dependence on foreign oil. These measures included: national maximum speed limit. The imposition of a 55 miles per hour speed limit was aimed at reducing fuel consumption. Studies had shown that fuel efficiency decreases significantly at higher speeds, and this measure was projected to save millions of barrels of oil annually. Daylight saving time extension. By extending daylight saving time, the government aimed to reduce the demand for electricity for lighting, thereby indirectly conserving fuel used in power generation. Heating oil rationing. The government encouraged households to lower their thermostats, aiming to reduce the consumption of heating oil. Public campaigns promoted the slogan, "Don't be foolish," to drive home the message of conservation. Odd-even rationing system. This system was implemented in several states to manage the demand at gas stations. It was a simple yet effective measure to reduce congestion and ensure a more orderly distribution of gasoline. These measures, while necessary, also had significant economic and social repercussions. The reduction in speed limits impacted travel times and logistics, while the heating oil rationing forced many to endure colder homes during the winter. The public's initial reaction ranged from acceptance to frustration, highlighting the societal dependence on readily available energy. The odd-even rationing system became one of the most memorable aspects of the crisis. On odd-numbered days, only cars with license plates ending in odd numbers could fill up, and vice versa on even-numbered days. This system aimed to reduce the demand on gas stations and spread the available supply more evenly. The impact on daily life. The gasoline crisis had profound effects on American daily life and the economy. Commuting patterns changed as carpooling became more common, and public transportation saw a surge in usage. Businesses, particularly those dependent on transportation and delivery services, struggled with increased costs and logistical challenges. The automobile industry, long accustomed to producing large, powerful cars, faced a sudden shift in consumer preferences. Fuel efficiency became a priority, leading to increased demand for smaller, more economical vehicles. Japanese automakers, who had been producing fuel-efficient cars for years, gained a significant foothold in the US market, a trend that would continue in the decades to follow. Government response and legislation. To address the underlying issues exposed by the crisis, the US government took several legislative actions. The most significant of these was the establishment of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR, in 1975, a massive stockpile of crude oil intended to provide a buffer against future supply disruptions. The Energy Policy and Conservation Act, EPCA, of 1975 aimed to improve energy efficiency and reduce reliance on foreign oil. It included measures such as Corporate Average Fuel Economy, CAFE, standards. These standards mandated improvements in the fuel efficiency of cars and light trucks. Development of alternative energy. Investments in research and development of renewable energy sources and nuclear power. These standards played a crucial role in reducing the average fuel consumption of new cars sold in the United States, marking a significant shift in automotive design and engineering. The Second Oil Shock, 1979 Iranian Revolution. Just as the effects of the 1973 embargo were beginning to recede, another crisis emerged. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution led to the overthrow of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and the establishment of an Islamic Republic under Ayatollah Khomeini. The revolution caused significant disruptions in Iran's oil production, further tightening global oil supplies. The resulting panic led to another surge in oil prices and renewed gasoline shortages in the United States. Long lines at gas stations reappeared, and rationing measures were reinstated in some areas. This second oil shock reinforced the lessons of the first, underscoring the vulnerability of the U.S. economy to oil supply disruptions and the critical need for energy diversification and conservation. Investment in alternative energy sources also received a boost. The U.S. government began funding research into solar, wind, and geothermal energy, seeking to diversify the nation's energy portfolio and reduce dependence on oil. Nuclear power, despite its controversies, was also expanded during this period as a means of providing a stable and substantial source of energy. Cultural shifts and environmental awareness. The gas crises of the 1970s also had a profound cultural impact. The era of cheap and unlimited gasoline gave way to a more conscious approach to energy consumption. Public awareness about the finite nature of fossil fuels and the environmental impact of their use grew significantly. This period saw the rise of the modern environmental movement, with organizations like the Sierra Club and Greenpeace gaining prominence. Books such as The Limits to Growth, published by the Club of Rome in 1972, and the establishment of Earth Day in 1970, reflected and fueled a growing awareness of environmental issues. The crises underscored the need for sustainable living practices and set the stage for future environmental policies and innovations. The gas rationing and oil crises of the 1970s were transformative events in American history. They exposed the vulnerabilities of a nation heavily dependent on foreign oil and prompted significant changes in energy policy, economic practices, and consumer behavior. The lessons learned during this tumultuous decade continue to influence energy policies and practices today, reminding us of the importance of resilience, diversification, and sustainability in a complex and interconnected world. The lessons from the gas rationing and oil crises of the 1970s continue to resonate today. The period highlighted the vulnerability of relying heavily on a single, non-renewable energy source and the importance of energy diversification. It also demonstrated the need for robust strategic reserves and the ability to respond quickly to supply disruptions. The focus on fuel efficiency and alternative energy sources that began in the 1970s has continued to influence energy policy. Today, issues of energy security and sustainability are more critical than ever. as the world faces the challenges of climate change and the transition to a low-carbon economy. The 1970s oil crises were a wake-up call that reshaped American society, economy, and policy. They taught invaluable lessons about the importance of resilience, conservation, and innovation in the face of adversity. Lessons that continue to guide us as we navigate the complexities of the 21st century energy landscape. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe and share for more content like this.